Is simply being human truly enough? We often take this invisible force for granted, don't we? Something that shapes, well, pretty much everything about our lives. How we think, what we eat.
It's fundamental.
Yeah.
Absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
Yet, yeah, pinning it down is tricky.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really do a deep dive into this, into the science of human culture. We've gathered insights from a whole stack of sources: anthropology, sociology, psychology, philosophy, even biology and economics.
Right. We're aiming for a pretty comprehensive picture here.
We want to give you an understanding that, really sticks.
And we'll cover a lot of ground. We'll start with just defining culture, which is harder than it sounds. Then look at its evolutionary roots, the rules we live by, how it impacts our minds, our genes even.
And the outcomes, right? Both the good and the not so good societal effects.
Absolutely. The whole spectrum.
And look, this isn't just dry theory, we promise. Think of it as a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Expect some surprises, maybe some aha moments that might just shift how you see things.
It's really about understanding you and the world spinning around you.
Okay, let's get started then. So, first things first. Culture. What does that word even bring to mind for you? Because honestly, defining it is surprisingly tough. Did you know there are over 164 different definitions documented?
It's staggering, isn't it? 164 ways to slice it. But if you boil it down, some core elements emerge. There's a classic definition from Edward Tyler back in 1870. He called it that complex whole, which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society.
Right. So it's about what we learn and share in groups.
Exactly. And Cicero, way back, talked about cultivation of the soul, a philosophical root there, too.
And a more modern take I find really powerful is culture as the collective programming of the mind. Programming that, distinguishes one group from another, like an operating system.
That's a great analogy. And this programming, it has layers. On the surface, you've got the observable stuff, artifacts, dress codes, office layouts, things you can see. Then there are espoused values, what people say motivates them, their stated reasons.
Got it.
But the deepest layer, the real driver, is the basic underlying assumptions. These are unconscious beliefs. They're the hidden logic that shapes how we actually perceive, think, and feel, often totally taken for granted.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because this culture, this programming, it's distinct from our basic human biology.
Yes, distinct from universal human nature, which is inherited.
And also distinct from our individual personalities.
Precisely. Personality is more that unique mix of genes and personal experience. Culture is the shared layer.
Can you give an example of how culture maybe interacts with biology?
Oh, definitely. Take eating. It's a biological need, obviously. We all need to eat. But culture dictates what we eat, when we eat, how much, who we eat with, all those specifics. And sometimes culture can even override biology. Think about, say, a deep cultural revulsion towards eating something like rattlesnake meat. That learned idea can be so strong it causes vomiting, right? It reverses a basic biological drive for nutrition.
Wow, that really shows the power of that programming.
It does. And remember, culture is fundamentally social. It exists in groups. It's learned, not innate. It changes, usually gradually. Its different parts are interconnected.
And crucially, it's descriptive, not evaluative.
Exactly. No culture is inherently better or more advanced than another. They're just different ways of being human.
Which leads to that paradox. It's universal. All societies need it, yet its forms are incredibly specific. A thumbs up here is good, somewhere else it's not.
Right. That context is everything.
Yeah.
And psychologically, culture plays a huge role. Some theories, like terror management theory, suggest it provides meaning. It acts as a buffer against, well, existential dread.
A buffer? How so?
By helping us see ourselves as persons of worth within the world of meaning. It helps us deny our sort of animal insignificance, the fear of death. It gives life structure and purpose beyond just biology.
That's profound. Thinking of culture as a shield against meaninglessness. So it's not just arbitrary customs, it's deeply tied to our evolution.
Absolutely. It's an evolved ability shaped by natural selection.
And the proof is in those cultural universals you mentioned, things found in nearly all societies.
Exactly. Things like language, tool use, family structures, rituals. They suggest a common evolutionary foundation. And this leads us to something called dual inheritance theory, or gene-culture coevolution.
Okay, break that down a bit. Gene-culture coevolution.
It's basically a feedback loop. Our genes influence our capacity for culture, and the cultures we create can then influence which genes get favored by selection. So biology shapes culture, and culture shapes biology. They evolve together.
Ah, okay, like intertwined paths.
Precisely. And culture itself evolves, kind of like species do, through a sort of Darwinian selection of ideas and practices.
That makes sense. And you can really see culture's power as an adaptation. Think about it. Physically, humans aren't the strongest or fastest, are we?
Not by a long shot.
But through culture, the shared knowledge, the tools, we can manage animals vastly more powerful than us. Like an elephant, right?
Exactly. It's the cultural know-how, the technology that allows that. Not raw strength. Culture is essentially a maintenance system for group well-being. It lets us figure out our needs and demands and then meet them.
It's what makes complex society possible.
It truly is.
Hmm.
And it profoundly shapes our instincts.
Mm-hmm.
Instincts like eating, sleeping, aggression, they're innate. But culture provides the rules, the framework.
How they're expressed, channeled.
Yes, how they're regulated, given meaning. Think of food to get preferences, rituals, table manners. That's all culture layering onto the biological need. Even a smile. The physical act might be universal, but its meaning, highly cultural.
So pulling this together, culture isn't just a nice to have, it's a super adaptation.
The super adaptation, yeah. It augments our biology, redirects instincts.
Meaning, just being biologically human isn't enough for the complex social lives we lead.
Not at all. Culture provides that essential blueprint for intricate interaction and cooperation.
Which really throws out that old nature versus nurture debate, doesn't it? It's not either.
It's really not. A better way to think about it, perhaps, is culture as our ecological niche.
Like a snail carries its shell.
Kind of. Humans carry their culture with them. It's the environment we create and live within, shaping us as much as we shape it.
Wow. Can you give an example of that kind of biocultural development?
Sure. Think about hunting in our evolutionary past. The shift to savannas, the need to hunt, that drove weapon invention, dietary changes, new living arrangements.
Okay.
But also, it likely spurred the development of ethical rules. How do you use these new, dangerous tools? Who gets the spoils? And maybe even physical changes. Some argue our unique ability to balance on one foot, crucial for things like throwing and, interestingly, dance, is linked to this whole complex.
Dance linked to hunting evolution. That's wild.
It shows how deeply intertwined biology and culture can become.
And this culture, it's passed on mainly through learning, right? Not genes.
Overwhelmingly non-genetic.
Mm-hmm.
We learn by watching, imitating, being taught, conditioning, like learning that lasagna recipe you mentioned earlier, just by observation. That's cultural transmission.
Right. And how does that transmission actually work? There's this social minds hypothesis.
Yeah, the idea there is that cultural transmission isn't something we evolved a specific mechanism for, like language maybe. Instead, it's more of an outcome of our general social intelligence, our ability to understand intentions, communicate deliberately.
Kind of like how diseases spread using existing pathways.
That's the analogy some researchers use, yeah.
Yeah.
Like epidemiology. Cultural ideas spread because we're socially connected and communicative, not because of a dedicated culture transmission module in the brain.
Interesting. And the environment plays a huge role too, obviously.
Immense. The environment offers possibilities, pathways for cultural development. That's possibilism. But cultures also actively shape their environments. Think about traditional ecological knowledge, or tech.
Tech.
Yeah, the deep knowledge indigenous and local communities often have about their ecosystems passed down orally. It often guides really sustainable practices. It shows how culture can either work with or against the environment.
Which really brings home the value of diversity. Cultural homogeneity seems risky.
Very risky. Ethnocultural variability, like biodiversity, provides resilience, more ways to adapt. Homogeneity can be a dead end.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. How does culture actually shape how we think? Our cognition, our ways of knowing. This feels like meta-science, studying the science of culture itself.
It does get meta, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of our own cultural lenses when we study it. But we see clear, systematic differences in reasoning styles.
Like what?
Well, broadly speaking, Western cultures tend to foster analytic thinking, focusing on objects, decontextualized, using formal rules and logic.
Okay, analytic.
Whereas many East Asian cultures tend towards holistic thinking, paying attention to the whole field, the context. More associative, more intuitive, perhaps.
So different ways of processing the same information.
Fundamentally different. And this can lead to misunderstandings, even what some call mutual yuck responses.
Mutual yuck.
Yeah, where people from different traditions find each other's perfectly normal practices morally questionable or just.
Yeah.
Weird. Like that example of American lawyers finding Chinese investigation methods confusing because they don't follow familiar rules of evidence.
Wow. So even our sense of logic isn't universal.
It's heavily culturally influenced, and this extends to domains we think of as objective.
Like math.
Even math.
Yeah.
Studies show national culture traits, like long-term orientation, correlate with math achievement and well-being, and even within science itself. Compare physics and mathematics. They have distinct disciplinary cultures. Physicists often value intuition. They're outcome-focused. Mathematicians prioritize rigorous proof, process over outcome. They can experience genuine culture shock interacting with each other.
Different tribes, even within science. That's fascinating.
And the impact on mental health is profound. Culture affects everything. If and how people seek help, how they cope, their social support, the stigma.
Stigma, right. You mentioned Asian patients sometimes reporting physical symptoms.
Yes, conversation can be more common in some cultures.
Yeah.
And the stigma, especially in collectivist societies, can affect the whole family's reputation, marriage prospects, economic standing. It's huge.
So the big takeaway here for you listening is that what feels rational or normal to you is shaped by your cultural background.
Absolutely. And developing cultural intelligence means recognizing your own biases, becoming aware of that lens.
Okay, let's talk about the rules. The architecture of human rules, norms, laws, traditions. How do these structures work?
Well, they've certainly evolved. From informal social norms, maybe hinted at in ancient texts, to the highly formalized legal systems we see today. There's that classic idea from Henry Maine.
From status to contract.
Exactly. Suggesting that as societies get more complex, relationships shift from being defined by birth and social position, status, to being defined by agreements, contract.
And what's the fundamental purpose of all these rules?
Multiple purposes, really. Primarily establishing order and predictability. Societies just can't function without some shared expectations. Cooperation depends on it.
Makes sense.
Then there's protecting rights and liberties, think constitutions, human rights law. Rules also drive social change. Civil rights laws, environmental regulations, they push society forward. And of course, economic stability. Rules governing commerce, property, labor, they underpin the economy.
But it's not always positive, is it? There's a dark side to rules.
Definitely a double-edged sword. Rules operationalize cultural values, sure, but they can also lock in inequality. They can reinforce unfair power structures, discrimination. Often, rules serve the interests of dominant groups. You always have to ask, who benefits?
Right. Which maybe explains why people break rules even within their own culture. It seems counterproductive.
It's complex. Why do we break rules? Well, individual factors play a part. Personality, impulsivity, sensation-seeking. Your upbringing matters. Inconsistent enforcement in childhood, for instance. Peer pressure is huge, especially for younger people. And broader cultural factors matter too. Is it a highly individualistic culture or a collectivist one? That shapes attitudes towards rules. Plus, psychological reasons, maybe coping with stress.
And what about this idea of collective illusions?
Ah, yes. That's fascinating. It's where most people in a group privately disagree with something.
But they go along with it.
They go along because they think everyone else agrees. It's based on a misreading of the group's actual beliefs.
Why does that happen?
Because society often punishes people who speak out against the perceived norm. It creates this pressure to conform, even if the norm is based on a collective illusion. It makes challenging bad rules really hard.
But people do challenge norms sometimes. Deviation isn't always bad.
Absolutely not. Think about artists. They often have a bit more leeway, right? A permission structure to be a little weird, as one source put it.
Hold up a mirror.
Exactly. They can create that first crack in a rigid norm. And then you have positive deviance.
Positive deviance.
Yeah, people who break rules or taboos, often secretly, but for a beneficial outcome. Like those mothers finding ways around harmful traditional practices to improve their children's health, they show a better way as possible.
That's hopeful, that individuals can spark change by breaking norms constructively. But then there's the really dark side, when cultures actively try to eliminate other cultures, cultural imperialism, colonialism.
Yes, this is a grim but crucial part of the story. Cultural imperialism is essentially using a dominant culture's power, its language, politics, economy, media, to create and maintain unequal relationships. It's about imposing dominant ideas, limiting local culture. Herbert Schiller wrote about how the American way of life was spread globally, sometimes coercively, sometimes persuasively.
And history's just littered with examples, isn't it?
Tragically, yes. Ancient Rome assimilating groups like the Etruscans, replacing their language. Colonial powers imposing their education systems, their sports, often under justifications like the white man's burden. In North America, Canada's residential schools actively suppressing Indigenous languages and cultures. The use of Native American mascots in the U.S. During wars, pressure on immigrant groups to abandon their heritage, their horrific Germanization policies at the Nazis.
Recently, too.
Absolutely. China's Cultural Revolution destroying historical heritage, the Four Olds. ISIS deliberately demolishing ancient sites in Iraq and Syria to erase history and assert dominance.
What drives this? Is it just about control?
It's often a mix. Hegemonic control, yes. Economic gain pillaging resources. Ideological or religious conviction. Resource acquisition. But often, as some sources grimly state, the underlying goal is to essentially annihilate the group itself by destroying its cultural foundations.
And the psychological impact on people caught in this must be immense.
Devastating. Especially for people navigating multiple cultures, there's this concept of intragroup marginalization.
Feeling rejected by your own heritage group.
Exactly, feeling rejected for adapting to the dominant culture. This is linked to depression, high stress, poor well-being, and in some cases, it can lead to extreme defensiveness about one's heritage culture, even a willingness to fight or die for it. There are potential links to radicalization here.
So the takeaway isn't just historical awareness, it's about recognizing how cultural suppression functions as a tool of oppression, a violation of rights, even today.
Precisely. Distinguishing genuine diversity from oppressive imposition.
Okay, let's bring this right down to the individual level. How does culture shape your personal development, maybe even your biology?
It's profound. Think about developmental milestones. When do kids start school? When are they expected to become independent from parents?
Yeah, it varies hugely, right?
Hugely. What's considered normal or successful development is deeply cultural. Parenting styles, too. An authoritative style might be lauded in the U.S., but a more authoritarian style might yield equally good outcomes in, say, a Chinese-American family. Context is key.
Okay, now for the really mind-bending part you touched on earlier. Culture changing our genes. How is that possible?
Through epigenetics. Remember, this isn't changing the DNA code itself, but modifying how genes are expressed, turning them on or off, up or down.
Right, the switches.
Exactly. And evidence suggests that shared group-level trauma, what we call cultural trauma, can leave epigenetic marks that get passed down generations.
Pat down.
Yeah. The classic example involves offspring of Holocaust survivors showing altered stress responses, even without direct experience of the trauma themselves. The trauma echoed through their biology via epigenetics.
That's incredible. And ethnicity itself.
Studies are finding distinct DNA methylation patterns, those epigenetic marks associated with ethnic identity, even beyond shared genetic ancestry. It suggests these patterns reflect shared environmental, social, or cultural histories. Ethnicity, in this sense, is like a bigger family imprint, reflecting both genes and shared experience. Biology records history.
Wow. Okay, zooming back out, how do these deep cultural differences play out globally? In diplomacy, international relations?
They create huge challenges. Communication styles direct versus indirect. Nonverbal cues eye contact, meaning respect or aggression. Conflict approaches confront or avoid. These aren't trivial differences. They can lead to major misunderstandings and friction.
Which is why cultural intelligence, CQ, is so important now.
Absolutely essential. CQ is that ability to effectively navigate diverse cultural contexts, to understand, adapt, and bridge those differences. It's a critical skill in our interconnected world.
So the message here is powerful. Cultural inequalities have biological echoes, and many global conflicts aren't just about politics or resources.
They're often fundamentally clashes of these deeply ingrained cultural frameworks, this invisible architecture we've been exploring.
So given all this complexity, this deep, often invisible influence, can technology, specifically AI, help us navigate it better, maybe even build a more harmonious world?
AI definitely has potential. It's incredibly fast at processing cultural data, spotting patterns, identifying differences. That's a strength. And if you guide it carefully, it can help tailor communication or content for different cultural contexts. It might even help spot biases in text.
But there are big limitations, right?
Huge limitations. Crucially, AI has no real understanding, no consciousness, no lived experience. It can't feel culture.
It just processes data.
Exactly. And its output is only as good as its training data, which is often full of biases reflecting dominant cultures. It struggles massively with nuance, ethics, sensitivity. It It can't adapt dynamically like a human can.
So it doesn't have genuine CQ.
Not in the human sense, no.
So how do we leverage AI's strengths without amplifying its weaknesses? How do we make it more culturally intelligent, or at least less culturally ignorant?
We have to be very intentional. It requires active human guidance. First, nudge the bot to consider the cultural context.
Meaning?
Explicitly tell it the context in your prompts. Create detailed personas. A manager in Berlin is different from one in Tokyo. Localize the request.
Okay, give it context. What else?
Second, tell the bot what style and tone to use. Be explicit. If you need a constructive tone or need to avoid direct criticism for saving face reasons, you have to specify that.
Don't assume it knows.
Never assume. And third, crucially, humans must call out the bot's bias. We need to actively look for bias in its output, challenge it, ask for diverse perspectives.
Test it, like asking how the language would change if the subject were different.
Exactly like that. It requires constant vigilance and critical engagement from the human user.
So it's a tool, but one that needs very careful handling.
Precisely. But used thoughtfully, AI could be transformative. It could help with environmental sustainability by integrating tech with modern data. It could potentially help identify patterns related to harmful cultural practices or human rights issues, informing interventions. It could foster global understanding, maybe even help optimize governance by spotting those collective illusions.
Or enhance education.
Yeah, by informing more culturally responsive teaching or personalized learning paths. The potential is there, if guided wisely. So, to kind of wrap up this deep dive, what we've seen is that culture is this incredibly complex, absolutely vital evolutionary strategy. It's layered, dynamic, learned, shared. It gives meaning, structure, and allows us to adapt in ways biology alone can't.
But it's got that dual nature.
Absolutely. Essential for cohesion, but also a powerful force for inequality, harm, oppression. We saw the impact of collective illusions, the devastation of cultural imperialism. It's both our greatest tool and sometimes a weapon.
And AI emerges as this potential collaborator, a tool to help us navigate this complexity, maybe mitigate the harms if we use it wisely.
A collaborative partner, yes. It won't solve our problems for us, but it could help us understand them better and work towards better outcomes.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought. The ultimate deep dive, maybe, is into our own cultural programming. How might understanding these deep cultural currents, this invisible architecture, change how you interact with the world today, at home, at work, when you read the news? What collective illusions might you be unknowingly participating in? And how could you start to become more aware of them, to see the water you swim in?
This is DigitView.